All right. We finished that beautiful speech that the Rebbe gave. Here is what's called a Maamar, a Hasidic discourse that the Rebbe gave in 1982. And it's from a sentence in last week's Torah portion, Ha'azinu. Ha'azinu. And it's basically, the sentence is also a preparation for um, Yom Kippur and Sukkot. Sukkot. And what does the sentence say? We'll have a look at the sentence there. It's Hazinu, and it's praising what God does to the Jewish people. It says, Kanesher, that God to the Jewish people is like an eagle, Ye'ir Kino, that he wakes his nest up, his children up. Al Gazalov Yerachef, he hovers over his young, over the, what are they called? There's a word for it, the Gazalov, the young birds. There's a word for young birds. Anyway, not chicks, they're chicks. Here's the sentence. Let's have a look at the sentence. Here. Kanesher Yair Tino, like a eagle that wakes up its young, its nest. Al Gozalav Yerachef, on its young birds, on its, is there a word for that? What is it? There's a word for it. Anyway, on its chicks, Yerachef, he hovers. Yifros Kanafav, he spreads his wings over them. Yikachehu Yisrael, he takes them and he lifts them up al evrosov, on his limbs, an eagle. So it says God is like an eagle. He hovers over the Jews and he takes them on his back, so to speak, on his wing. Let's see what Rashi says. It says like an eagle. It says that God deals with the Jewish people with mercy and with with mercy and with, how do you say, the kindness, like an eagle that is very merciful on its young, and it doesn't go into the nest suddenly, but first it like flaps its wings over its children, and between one tree and the other one, right? And he wakes them up so that they should have the power to, the ability to accept the fact that the mother is coming down. So the mother is huge, children are small. So the eagle flaps its wings, wakes up its children so that they'll be able to receive the whatever it is, the worms or whatever it brings. It says Einu machbid atzmo, that God does not, he hovers over his chicks. That God does not how do you say, machbid, he doesn't put himself too heavily on them. Ela chofef mechofef noga ve'enu naga. He just touches them and doesn't touch them. Also God. It says, Lo yimtza'u saged koach. God does not reveal all of his power to the Jews at once. And God did not reveal to the Jews from one point, just from Mount Sinai, but it says from all of the directions in the world. It says Hashem revealed himself, Zarach Misair, etc., etc., that God revealed from all the directions in the world, so that the Jews wouldn't be so concentrated. The Jews would be able to accept it. So what is we saying? That God gradually reveals himself to the Jews, and God has mercy on the Jews so that he doesn't give, if he didn't give them the Torah at once from one direction, it says gradually, and it says that he takes them on his wings. He says when he comes to take them to a far place, he doesn't take it with his feet like all the other birds, because there are all the other birds are below the eagle. So therefore, what does he do? He also, so what does he do? He takes them on his on his wings, on his back. He bears them. Now, I don't know if this is true. I've never seen an eagle take its children, but that's what he says. says he puts his young on his back, and the eagle says it's better that if someone shoots an arrow or shoots a gun, the better it should hit me than it should hit my children. Also, the same thing as God. It says that God takes the Jewish people on his back, so to speak, and he took them to Yam Suf. And it says that the Egyptians were throwing all sorts of spears and slingshots and what is it? What are they called? These these the big rocks that they shoot from. What are they called? Slings. Anyway, I can't remember. The words go out of my mind. Catapults. Oh, catapults. And it says that God stood between the Jews and the Egyptians, and he took these big rocks and spears and arrows himself. Like the eagle is willing to take these shots of hunters and in order to protect his children. Okay, so that's what we learned. Good. That is the simple meaning, how kind God is to us, how much he loves us. Let's learn the mind. Kanesher your kino, al goes the love of your rachef. It says like a eagle that wakes up his children and he hovers over them in his wings. The sentence right before the sentence, it says, be'eretz midbar. Let's go back to the sentence. Let's go, just so we know what we're going on over here. Here we go. Next, the sentence right before. It says, God found them be'eretz midbar in a desolate land. Ubetohu yalel v'shimon. A place which is a wasteland, desolate, barren land. Yisovavenu, he surrounded them. Yavonanehu, he built them up. Yitzrenu ke'ishon enam, and he like preserved them like the how do you say the apple of his eye, the apple of his eye. God found them in the desert. Okay, and then afterwards it says that he hovered over them like an eagle, and he protects the Jewish people. I mean, pretty much you can see this today. You can see this today. I mean, the whole world hates the Jews, and they're all screaming. And then this, and there's, and the in Israel. I mean, I live in Israel, right? So these big rockets that are being shot at us. One big rocket fell about, I don't know, 200, 300 yards from my house. From my house, a couple of days ago, there were a couple of women that got shrapnel in their legs. Huge explosion into the house. They've shot over since October the 7th, that all of our enemies around us have shot over 20,000 missiles into Israel, and there's been almost no one hurt. Almost no one. I mean, the people that were, it's terrible, but even one of these missiles could, God forbid, it could be thousands of people could be injured, and no one's been, almost no one's been. It doesn't make any sense. The whole thing makes God is protecting us. So it says, here we go. Let's go. What is written before this? It says that God found them in a desolate land, and afterwards it's the next sentence says Hashem badad yanchenu, that God alone will lead the Jewish people. Let's go. If we're going to do it, let's do it again. Okay, so we had the sentence before this said that God found us in a desolate place, and he took them, and then it says like an eagle hovers over its young, and the next sentence says Hashem badad yanchenu, God alone conducts the Jews. The animo il nachor, and there's no other strange God or foreign God that helps God. God is alone. He doesn't need his son doesn't help him, and his ghost doesn't help him, and his spirit doesn't help him. It's pure God is conducting the Jewish people, leading the Jewish people. Okay, now let's go back to our sentence. Right in between this, that God leads them alone, and that God found them in the desert, is our sentence that we had over here. Like an eagle, he hovers over his young. Okay, let's see, what does this mean to me and you? It's a very nice thing to know that God cared about the Jews and he cares about the Jews. But, how does that help us to serve God? You can say, let's go. It says before that God found them in the land, and afterwards it says that God alone leads the Jews. Apirish, the simple meaning is that God, noeg, that God conducts himself. He treats the Jewish people, barachamim, with mercy. Come on, Nesher, like a eagle. Hamarachev, al goes love, that hovers over its youth, like the Rashi that we just finished learning. Rashi, by the way, is Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchak. He lived about 900 years ago in France. He made the Kolomar, in other words, sheyesh rachame nesher, there is the mercy of a eagle, a physical eagle, a bird, simply. The yesh rachamim, and then there is mercy, which is like, higher than the mercy of a eagle, and it's above it. In other words, where does the eagle get mercy from? Why is it the nature of an eagle to have mercy over its children? Why? Because that's its nature. Nature is another way of saying, I don't know. Nature is another way of saying there's no explanation. That's just its nature. Says the Rebbe, there's a higher nature. There's a higher nature. There's a spiritual nature, and the eagle receives its mercy from that spiritual nature. If we remember, it says that on the chariot of God that Ezekiel saw, the throne of God, that around it were a face of a lion, a face of an ox, a face of a man, and the face of an eagle. Oh, and this is that eagle that's above the physical eagle that's mentioned in our Torah portion that we learn from. We can extrapolate from a regular, normal, physical, biological bird, which is called an eagle, and that eagle demonstrates mercy. As from that we can learn like an eagle, in other words, the source of what we see, which is higher than it. There's a mercy which is even higher. And that's the mercy that God shows to us. That's something like what an eagle does, but it's like an eagle, but God's mercy is infinitely higher. Okay. Everything which is in the Torah, there is in all of the worlds. Ad l'mayla mayla. Higher and higher and higher and higher levels of godliness. Umizeh, moving from this, it's understood. Shekashem, just like sheyesh beit bechina, there are these two levels we talked about. Number one is in this world a physical eagle, and the mercy which is shining in the physical eagle. We said that's called an eagle, and like an eagle, which is higher than an eagle. Kach also in the upper worlds, Olamot, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. Those are the spiritual worlds. The lowest of them is called Asiya. Above that is Yetzira, and above that is Bria. Ad Olam Atzilut, until the world of Atzilut, which is the world of pure godliness. Godliness. So, okay, so these four worlds, this is something like in this physical world, we have four different types of life. Right? Why does God have to make four different types of life? What type of four different life? There's mineral, there's plant, there's animal, and there's human. Each one is totally different from the other, especially in its mobility. A rock doesn't move at all. A plant, at least it grows up and it's stuck to where it's in the ground. An animal, an animal is not stuck to where it is in the ground, but it's limited as far as intellect goes, right? One animal can't teach another animal, an animal can't use its mind to change its nature, the animal. So animal is much more mobile than a plant, and of course much more mobile than a rock. And then we have humans, they can talk to one another, they can change their minds, they can move. And that's these five levels. Essentially, there's a fifth level also, which is the Jews. But that's not what we're dealing with here. So it says that there's four worlds, as just like there is in this physical world, these four totally different types of life, or if you want to call it different types of consciousness that there is rock consciousness and plant consciousness and animal and human consciousness, and each one is totally different from the other one. So also up in the upper worlds, there's what's called the world of Asiya. There's a certain type of, that's mostly the stars and the planets. And then there's the world of Yetzir, that's mostly the angels. And there's Bria, that's the world of souls. And the world of Atzilus, that's like pure godliness. Also, in each one of these, there's also the level of eagle, and above it, which is called like an eagle, something which is higher. Sheyesh bo eser sfirot. Then even though that in each of these worlds there's what's called 10 aspects of godliness, harihu olam ha'achdut, the world of Atzilut, this is the world of Atzilut, it's divided, it's godliness, and God is one. It says, even though that in the world of Atzilut, there are all these aspects of God, these 10 aspects, the facets of God, which are called sfirot, but they are nevertheless unified totally with God. Nevertheless, Gambo, even in the world of Atzilut, there is these two levels of nesher, of an eagle, which this is God's mercy of Atzilut. And there's also the level of like a nesher, like an eagle, which this is mercy, which is even above this mercy of Atzilut. That's why in Yiddish, I don't know how this works exactly in other languages, but in Yiddish, one of the names for God is called the Eberster. Eberster means the highest. The highest. And no matter what any aspect of God, there's always something higher. So we call the essence of God the highest. There's nothing before, there's nothing above, there's nothing. But any aspect of godliness that we can relate to in any way, even the world of Atzilut, which is like pure godliness, there are levels. And there's what's called mercy and above. That's ki nesher. It's like an eagle. But awful became nevertheless Hari Ikar, the main thing of the Torah is Lamata, is below. So you see, everything that there is in the world is found in the Torah, is found in the world. So the same thing in the Torah, there's all these different levels, deeper and deeper and deeper levels of reality and understanding what there is. Here, take this example. We have the Torah, this Torah, last week's Torah portion. It says God is like an eagle. What does it mean, like an eagle? That there is an eagle, physical eagle, and that God is like that. In other words, above that. Okay, so what's the main thing? The main thing is the spiritual, right? That's the source. Says the Rebbe, but nevertheless, in the Torah, it doesn't exactly work that way. The main thing of the Torah is what's in this world. Like it says, Torah lo b'shamayim. The Torah, that sort of turns everything around. You see, God creates the world in such a way that the worlds are, so to speak, farther and further from his oneness. Further and further from his oneness. That's this whole idea of tzimtzum and etc. And it's explained in great detail, and we've talked about it in great detail, but it's a tremendous mystery. But it's the fact that God is even concealed from the highest of worlds. The angels are going crazy for God, and the angels are tremendously godly, spiritually, whatever you want to call it. And to them, God is still as far away as God is far away from us. They have no comprehension of it. They just feel that there is such a thing as God. And the little bit that they understand makes them appreciate even more how far away they are. Okay, so in other words, the way that God made the worlds is that the higher you go, the closer you are to God. But when God gave the Torah, the whole thing flipped around. That suddenly this physical world became the highest. In this physical world, you can do the will of God. You can make God happy. In the upper worlds, you don't do the will of God. You don't make God happy. The will of God is automatically done. So the main thing is with the Torah. The main thing is in this physical world. Torah to Rav Magid, like the Magid of Mezrich said on the word, you should know what is above you. There is, in a lot of synagogues, there's written, especially, I guess, religious synagogues and the non-religious, the normal religious synagogues that they call them Orthodox. A lot of times on the place where the the one who leads the congregation, there's written da mala mala mimach. You should know what is above you. That's why we wear a kippah. Why do the Jewish people wear a kippah? To know that there's something above us. My mind goes up to here, and God is above me. Like to remind all the time. That's called it's yarmulke, fear of God. To know that there's there you go, Shalom Paul. And to know there's something above me. That's a simple meaning. You should know that God is above you. Right? That's what we just finished saying, that the spiritual worlds are the main thing that's above us. The Maggid of Mezrich said a different explanation. Da malamaila, you have to know that whatever occurs above in the upper worlds, mimach, it comes from you. Shakol and yanim, that everything which is above, all of these upper worlds, the highest worlds, like an eagle, like this, the Tsilus, and the highest levels of it before, that all depends on us. Avoda adadam, the service of man that's found in this physical world. Ubafrat, and especially after the Torah was given. I mean, really, it began with Abraham. Abraham was already important to God, right? What was it, 400 years before the Torah was given? Especially after the Torah was given, that then the Torah was given below, like it says, lo b'shamayim, that godliness is not in heaven anymore. Godliness is in the Torah, in the world, and even more. The call of gavoa yoter, that which is the highest comes down below more. In other words, the more mundane a thing is in Torah, the higher that thing is. Hainu, the inyan hachinayla, that the highest aspects of the Torah are found specifically below. That's why humility is so important. Umizeh, from this it's understood the idea of the eagle. Shapasuk zeh, that this includes in it two opposites. The highest mercy, that's ki nesher, is drawn down below in the physical world into a physical eagle in the world. Huh? So what's the main thing? The main thing is the spirituality. Ken nesher, like an eagle. Says the Rebbe, okay, that's one way of looking at it. That's good, true. I mean, the spiritual is certainly closer to God's reality than ours. In this world, we're totally ignorant of what God is. The upper worlds are more truthful what God is. But nevertheless, that's if you look at it, the world from a spiritual eye. But if you look at the world from God's eye, then the main thing is this physical world. So we have two things: kin nesher, like an eagle. That's the spiritual aspect, and then we have the actual eagle. Which is the highest? We'll see. Up to now, what we know is the physical eagle somehow or other is higher than all these spiritual things we're learning from it. Let's see. And the topic is like this. The Hine Kasiv, it is written, Shlosha Hema Niflot Mimeni. There are three things that are, how do you say, King Solomon said this in the book of Proverbs. Here, let's see what it says. Proverbs, chapter 30, it says, there are three things which are amazing to me. And four things. So it says, the way of an eagle in the heavens, it says over there, and the way of a ship on the sea, and the way of a snake on a rock, and the way of a maiden with a man. Okay, Rashi explains what these things are, but here's not the point. It says these four things, why are they so amazing? Why are they amazing? So there's different explanations which are given, but nevertheless, these things amazed King Solomon. Well, the first one that he writes over there is the eagle in heaven. Eagle in heaven. And it's explained in another place. Here he says this is the Likuti Torah of the Arizal on Mishle. So the Arizal was like Kabbalah, right? The Kabbalistic book. It says, explains over there that what amazed King Solomon about the eagle in heaven. Why so? The Hifli, the Apella, that the wonder is, Ich yesh penei nesher. How can it be that there is on the chariot of God or on the throne of God. I talked about it before. On the throne of God, the vision of Ezekiel, right? It says that there was a face of a man, face of a lion, face of a ox, and the face of an eagle. How can it be that there's a face of an eagle, which is an impure bird, on the chariot of God? What's an eagle doing over there? Okay, a lion is the same question, basically the same question as a lion, but at least a lion keeps to himself, right? A lion is an animal, keeps to himself, but an eagle is like flying up, it's really high, and it's showing the success of evil, right? It flies high. So even there's one of the prophets that says, if you fly high like an eagle, I will bring you down from there. But nevertheless, they fly high, right? It's a big, how can it be that it goes so high? Here you see that the enemies of the Jews always are the greatest. They rule over the world. The Babylonians ruled over the world. The Romans ruled over the world, right? The church today rules over the world, right? These are the big enemies of Judaism. The Nazis, right? The communists, they had tremendous success, and they were tremendously anti-Jew, but they had success. It's like an eagle, an impure, how do you say, the bird of prey, a murderous bird, and it flies up so high and it's so impressive. How can it be? That's what King Solomon was amazed. How can evil be so successful? How is it that there's a face of it, to the degree that there's even a face of an eagle around the chariot of God? We have to understand, Sahara Yesh, the Merkava, there is on the Merkava, on the chariot of God, also the face of a lion that's on the right. That this is also an animal which is impure. Why was King Solomon only amazed by the eagle? Right, according to the explanation of the Arizal, it doesn't sort of work out. That the reason that King Solomon was amazed, perplexed by an eagle in heavens is because it's an impure animal, and it's on one of the animals around the throne of God in the vision of Ezekiel. So he says, one second, so why wasn't he amazed by the lion? So the explanation is like this, according to what it says in another place, Shederech HaNesher, the way of a eagle, the face of the eagle on the throne, this is what's called Kav Emtsai. There's what's called the right side, the left side, and the middle. The right side and the left side, that's God's severity and God's kindness. But the middle is God's mercy. So we can understand that sometimes God's kindness can be misused, and God's severity can maybe overdo it a little bit. At least it seems to us. But God's mercy, how can that be represented by an impure animal? Right? We can understand that God's kindness can be represented by a lion. It says the lion is on the right. We can understand it. Good, because God, sometimes it goes bad. The example that's given, of course, is Abraham. Abraham was the side of kindness, and from Abraham came Yishmael. But the middle pillar, that's like Jacob. Jacob is pure mercy. All of his children were all pure. How can it be that represents God's kindness, God's infinite mercy, is an eagle, an impure animal? That's why King Solomon was amazed and perplexed by the face of the eagle more than by the face of the lion. The lion is also an impure animal, and it's also there on the chariot. It says, but the lion didn't amaze him so much because the face of a lion was on the right. The face of the lion on the chariot, this is on the right side, which that's only what's attached to what's called the external of God's will, the external of God's crown. And this is not such a big, amazing thing. Mercy touches the essence of God. God's right arm is just an aspect, which is not the case. The face of the eagle, that's what's called the middle pillar, God's mercy. This goes up to the essence of what God is, that what's called the essence of God's crown, the essence of God's will. And this King Solomon was amazed. How can it be that the face, that the image of a impure bird, right? A bird which is a murderous bird, and it's not kosher, How could this represent the essence of God, the mercy of God, God's crown? We just finished learning that that's what's revealed on Yom Kippur, and it forgives all sins. And that's represented by an impure bird. Should be a dove or something like that, really nice. Herein, an explanation is okay, so King Solomon was amazed by this, and we should be amazed also a little bit, at least, because if King Solomon didn't understand it, not only didn't understand it, he was surprised. So it should surprise us also. Why is God's mercy represented by an eagle? The explanation is like this. Because the aspect of God's mercy, it is rooted, in the inside of God's crown, or so an inside of God's will. Therefore, Nafla lamata mata has the ability to fall down low. That's what it's called, nesher. Why is an eagle called nesher? Because the word in Hebrew for something that falls out, that, how do you say, that descends very low, neshira v'nefila, something that like it falls away. When leaves fall out of a tree, it's called neshira. A nesher has the ability to come down very low. The nafil mean dargi, that it comes down, it has fallen from its high level. Ad la'of tamei, until it comes down and can be actually reflected and represented by an impure bird, shemichutz l'makom hakadousha, which is not in holiness. You can't bring an eagle into the holy temple. You can't bring it into the holy temple. Then what's it doing in the vision of Ezekiel? It says in its source, it's very, very, very good. It's because it's so very good and so high, it has the ability to come down very low. So now we can understand what it says in the sentences we said before. It says, what does it say the sentence before? It says, God found the Jews, Eretz Midbar, in a wasteland, in a desert. The Midbar, a desert, is a place that people cannot live. Nothing can grow there. There's no plants in a desert. There's no animals living in the desert. And even the scorpions and the snakes and whatever, it is very rare in a pure desert. A desert is a place where no one, a human being, can't live, not even the Adam Elyon, not even the upper man, the man sitting on the throne. That's the world of Atzilut. There can't be any sort of godliness there in the desert. That's where God found the Jews, in the lowest of the lowest places, in the desert. Al-Derek says similarly, wait, that's a sentence right before our sentence. Remember? That's what sentence here. Let's go back. Let's not go too far away from here. We go. Here. This is the sentence right before the one we're learning with the eagle. God found us in the desert, in a desolate wasteland, and God surrounded us, and etc. So first of all, God found us in the desert. The desert is a terrible place, and that's where the Jews were, the lowest of the lows. Al-Derek says similarly, a desert is outside of a place where people live. And even, it says, so to speak, God can't live there either. God can't keep a call Yisrael, all the Jewish people, every Jew has what's called a godly soul, a holy soul, which is a portion of God from above. Chelik Elokam Imal Mamash. Like it says before that, Chelik Hashem Amod. The sentence right before the sentences we just point out, it says that a part of God is his people. Chelik Hashem Amod. Yaakov Nachalato, Chevel Nachalato. So the Jewish people are a part of God. What are they doing in the desert? Good question. But that's where they are. Therefore, they have no connection whatsoever. They're not supposed to be in a desert. This is outside of any level of holiness. And not only that, that no human being can live there. It says no human being even passes through there. Hainu she'ein Yisrael kol sheichus. A Jew has no connection to places like that. A desert. That's what it means. Kenesher Yerkino. That's what it means that then, after God found the Jewish people in a desert, totally far away from anything, not even Jewish, anything that's even human. That's when God's mercy wakes up. And God's mercy is like an eagle. It's essential mercy, but it comes down even to the lowest places, even to the impure. Nafal, that's where the places where the Jews fell down. That's what Nesher means, to fall down. Nesher also means to fall down. And Nesher also means an eagle. So this is the aspect of God's mercy that comes down so tremendously low. So tremendously low. But Gam al Makom Zeh, even on a place like this, says that God found him in a desolate place. And even from there, Yekabetzcha, God can gather you together. Misham Yekachecha, God will take you. It's a sentence in Vayilech, a sentence. God is prophesying in this song. God is prophesying what's going to be in another 3,300 years. Now, God's going to gather all the Jews together. V'Allah, v'Hatshuva, that God will elevate them and make them return from this terrible place. This is by means of God revealing like an eagle. But Darga Hachil, the highest of highest levels. The inside of God's crown. Himinei ube of a Lashade Be Narga. Says that from the forest, this is talking about this, from you want to chop down the forest, so you get an axe. But an axe is just a piece of metal. It's very difficult. So you take a handle on the axe, and then you can hit with the axe with great power. But the handle is made from a tree. So you're chopping down the trees with a tree. Says the Rebbe the same thing. This mercy is revealed in an eagle. You're chopping down in the desert with an eagle. The desert is a place where no man can be, and the eagle is an impure thing, and one can be used for the other one. In other words, the whole purpose of God's mercy is to come down so low to these people that have fallen down. Nesher. And by means of this, you can rise up to the level of the inside of God's crown. The sense that everything which is highest comes down lowest, and therefore by means of going to the highest places, and Aliyah, which is the highest of highs, that enables to come down lowest of lows. This is a general principle in Torah, and of course, a person can make a big mistake with this and think, well, if it's low, so I'll just do bad things, and that attaches me to the highest. But it doesn't really work so well. It's like someone willfully asking criminals to kidnap him, and then it'll awaken my father's love for me. I know one person that anyway, he used to be a drug addict. Person used to be a drug addict. He gave classes afterwards in addictions. He gave a big class in my house. It lasted for months. And he used to be a big drug addict. And one day he arranged it with, he either arranged it, whatever. Anyway, he owed these people money. And because of the drugs. And he figured by means of this, he's going to arouse his father's attention to him, and he'll get money from his father. So he had the people call up and say, listen, we got your son over here. We have a gun to his head. He has to come up with $20,000 right now. If you don't give him $20,000, they're going to kill him. And his father said, listen, I'll give you $40,000 to kill him. In other words, it didn't work. His trick did not work. He thought that by going far away, that would arouse his father's mercy. And instead, his father just got sick of him. Do what you wanted to him. I don't care. Throw him in the garbage. I don't want to hear about it. The same thing, the Jewish people, you can't do sins intentionally and expect that God is going to save you. And you can't expect God will save you. Because we see that a lot of Jews did things like this, and in fact, it didn't work out. It didn't work out. There was the famous anyway. Okay, but the fact is that God loves every Jew, and even Jews that do purposely do sins, as God says, I'm going to gather you all up together. Everybody's going to change. Everyone's ideas will change. That's the part of the mercy. It'll change people's ideas. By means of this, it elevates them to what's called the inner level of Keter. And this is what we're going to talk about tomorrow. We're going to talk about tomorrow how it is that this aspect of God's mercy can come down to the lowest of places. And that's what's working now, arousing Jews all over the world. And surprisingly, we said it's by means of an impure bird. Well, that's unfortunately what's going on now. This Hamas and the United Nations and all these lowest of the low people, disgustingly, incredibly empty, destructive people that have never done anything good in their lives, they're the ones that are making the Jews return back to Judaism. Suddenly the Jews are starting to say, what? 1 second, I was one of these people. I thought these people were worth something. And Jews are starting to wake up, right? And there's anti-Semitism all over. Why? What's anti-Semitism? Why? What happened? What happened? You're fighting, you're killing. You have any proof that we're killing civilians in Gaza? You have proof there? Of course, the Hamas told us. The whole world is crazy. And Jews are starting to wake up and say, what's going on over here? What happened? I think everybody saw the famous thing it's going viral in this. There was a big march, pro-Palestinian march. Of course, there's a lot of Jews. And the Chabad people went there and asked people, are you Jewish? Would you like to put on tefillin? And one guy said, yeah, sure. And he put on tefillin. He's pro-Palestinian and he had a keffiyeh on, and he put on tefillin because they just don't know. And they've fallen so low, incredibly low, that specifically from there, they can wake up. As we're going to continue, God willing, Friday, tomorrow. Now, tomorrow is Erev Yom Kippur. So I hope we'll have a class tomorrow. I hope we will have a class tomorrow. And I will do everything that I can to make a class tomorrow. That there should be at 8:15. So be with us, God willing, and we'll learn together. We'll finish this Maamar. I made a mistake. 1 second.